good to have everybody here. Thank you for being part of this Wednesday night. Hope you're doing well this evening. Hope you and your family are doing well, having a good day and a good week. We are in Exodus 32 with the golden calf. I know Adam taught on this, but we'll go back and cover some things that perhaps he didn't get to. And in chapters 32 and chapter 33, 34, pivotal chapters, not just in the book, but in the history of Israel, because you've got this, that's just the tragedy of the golden calf, and yet we also have following this just this in-depth view of the character of God. You know, that He's a God of steadfast love, mercy, kindness, and passes His goodness before Moses, and that follows this golden calf. So we're going to look at one of the worst moments in Israel's history, and then also look at one of the great moments in Israel's history with God. So Exodus 32 is where we're going to be. Let's have a word of prayer and then we will get started with our study. Father, thank you for tonight and the opportunity to be with one another. Thank you for safety as we've traveled today, keeping our children safe as they went to school, our spouses safe as they went to work. And we're thankful, Father, that you brought us safely here tonight. We pray that we will be blessed by being here. Believe that we will be blessed with our mutual study of your word and blessed with encouragement to one another in the middle of the week. Thank you for being good to us. Thank you for being kind to us. Thank you for this day, the blessings that it contained, but we're also thankful for the opportunities that came our way. Opportunities to shine light, to be the salt of the earth, to maybe even plant the seed of the gospel and to be Jesus to someone else. We thank you for those opportunities, and we pray, Father, that we made the most of them. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. All right, so very quick recap from a couple of weeks ago. Thank you for being flexible with me, being out. I know we had the flu 2 weeks ago and then COVID last week, so I appreciate you being flexible. Appreciate Adam stepping in at the last minute, the last 2 Wednesday nights, and now we're very thankful for his good news and Maybell's good news. So I know we'll be praying for them as well on that and keeping them in the forefront of our mind. So a couple weeks ago, we broke this into 3 parts. We're looking at the golden calf from Israel's point of view, Aaron's point of view, and then Moses and God's point of view. And we started off with Israel's point of view, how the men, not the women, not everybody comes, but the men, most likely the heads of the families, the heads of the tribes, they come. Because Moses has been gone for 40 days, 40 nights. They just don't know what's happening to Moses. They don't know what's going on with him. Is that me? That was me? Okay. Oh, I'm good? Okay. All right. So that missing for 40 days, they don't know what's happening, and there's a delay. And we talked about what contributed to this, what contributes to the fact that they make a request before Aaron, make gods. You know, you got to do something. We don't know what's happened to Moses. And we talked about this word delay. And delay happens in life for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it happens because we've done something. Sometimes it happens because that's just the way life is, but it becomes a test. And we talked about just the variety of emotions and things probably going through Israel. They're nervous, they're scared, they're doubting, they're frustrated. All sorts of things that are taking place that probably contribute. Doesn't excuse what they do, but it probably contributes. And that usually is what happens to us. If we could look back in our life and the times where we made one of the worst possible decisions, made one of the worst mistakes that we could, one of the things that we ended up doing something that we never thought we would have done. If you follow the trail backwards, if you work your way backwards, you probably see a lot of things that contributed to it. You didn't know what was going on, so there were more questions than there were answers. You were confused. You were nervous. You were scared. You were doubting. Your faith grew weak instead of growing strong. You grew frustrated and angry. There are a lot of contributing factors, and I'm sure you've been there. And if not, we will be there. That's just the way that it is. So Israel does this, and it bothers them so much. And that's something that where we needed to be, and why it's so important that we remember the lessons that God teaches us through life and through Scripture. Israel, even though she had a delay, and there is no Moses for 40 days and 40 nights, they should have been able to go back and say, you know, this is bothering us, but when we didn't have water, God provided water. When we didn't have food, God provided food. When we were under threat of people who were after us and chasing us, God provided protection. When we needed guidance, God was there as a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud. They should have gone back, and that's one of the big lessons for us, is that when those moments happen in our lives, individually as families, that's when we need to go back to God and go back to His Word and what we know, and remind us to a certain extent, this is what He did in the past. Why is this current situation any different? Why would He be different? Why would God abandon? Why would God leave me alone, etc., etc.? So we talked about all of that. Doesn't excuse what they've done, doesn't excuse what you and I have done, but it makes sense because to a certain extent, we don't want to repeat what we've done before. So that's kind of the lesson that we got from Israel. So they gathered themselves against Aaron. They demand, make us gods. But they have a specific request. It's not necessarily about worship as much as make us gods that will go before us, that will lead us. But that term, that Hebrew term, is a military term. We're going to go conquer. We're going to do this. We need this warrior. We need this representative that's going to do all of these things for us. So, Aaron, we don't want you to just make us gods, but we want you to make us these generals, these things that are going to lead us, that are going to conquer. They're going to do that. Why is that a unique spin, a unique detail of making us gods? Why are they looking at it from a military point of view as opposed to worship or anything else? Yeah. It was. So going back to the plagues, you're right. I mean, it wasn't God, not just God versus Pharaoh, but Ra, I'll get it right, Osiris. We'll go over there. Go ahead. Yeah. No, I think you're onto something for sure with the symbol. If nothing else, a symbol for sure. But that coincides with what Scott has taught. We've got this power that's on our side. And it's visible, by the way. So we don't want just this invisible thing. We want this visible. We want this, we want people to be afraid as we're coming. Don't mess with us, for a lack of a better way of putting it. Go ahead. Right. Right. No, we need somebody, and you're right. Fears could be driving this. We need protection. We know what we're up against. We want victory. Our future's at stake because we don't want to go back to where we were. We don't want to be enslaved. We don't want to stay where we are. So we got to move forward. But there's so many things that are going on. So here's this answer. There's this military symbol. It's military might. And you fast forward in Israel's history into the time of Christ, what are they looking for in the Messiah? An earthly king who will do what? He will conquer the Romans. He will fight for us. He will raise Israel back to where she's supposed to be. This is some of the beginning places of where that thought's going to start developing throughout Israel's history, becoming like the nations around us. This could be starting those seeds are being planted to where that's going to happen. This is why it's one of the pivotal moments, because they're thinking militarily, and 2,000 years later, they still think the same thing. And we can fall in the same trap. We can think the same way. Earthly kingdom, we can think fight, can think all of those things, and that's not the way that it works. That's not the way that it could go. Yes, ma'am. I don't know anything of the significance. That's just what they go with. It could be raging. It could be. It could be. I mean, the bull is powerful. I mean, it's not a calf as we would think. It's a bull. The one that I always think is the Merrill Lynch that's kind of what I always envision it to be. Just this piece of majestic metal in symbolism. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Oh, I would think, if nothing else, the fear and the frustration of being in a just let me know if you don't hear me as I go out. And I don't mean to be yelling at you two while you're here. I'll get to you in just one quick second. I would say that the combination of fear and frustration, just the frustration of being camped in a desert place for almost 2 months with you got 1 million plus people perhaps that are there, crying babies, animals, everything's just, so the frustration and the fear, we just got to do something. It doesn't excuse it, but like you said, just to give a little bit of a break, here's this, we just got to do something. Go ahead.
One thing that a lot of people overlook is the fact that it's like, okay, yes, they did just come out of Egypt. One of the major gods of Egypt was Hathor, who was a cow-headed goddess of fertility and providence and, taking care of families.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. And so, the fact that this isn't necessarily a bull with the huge horns either. It could be a literal cow.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know for sure because it says calf.
Right.
So we're not positive on that fact. But the fact that you have something that is like, it might not be like the warrior with the big horns. It might be the cow with the calf suckling or something.
Yep.
So it can be really twisting like the whole mindset depending on how it is.
It can. Yep.
You have a really big problem when people don't have anything to do. You've got bricklayers, brick makers
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
that aren't doing anything anymore. They have no purpose. And you see the military, like on ship, they're not fighting. They're going to find something for these people to do.
Yeah.
People
Sure.
there's all kinds of things.
No, it is. It is. And the point of all of this exercise with all of these contributing factors is that we're not too far away from them ourselves, to where Satan plays and takes advantage of the situation that we find ourselves in life, whatever it may be. And it's just be aware of where you are, and don't let the delay or the waiting get the best of you in your faith. Because if frustration sets in, anger sets in, doubting sets in, time. You mentioned, Jeff, again, just kind of time. I don't really know what to do, so I'm going to find something to do. The list goes on. Be aware of it, your own self and your family's life. Because I have no doubt in my mind that when they made this request, that they were not thinking, Moses is going to come down, melt this cow, and make us drink this cold water. But that's what happens. And the point being is, we have a proverb that says, if you made your bed, now you got to, right? That when Moses does this, and we're not excusing their behavior. We're not looking at it as a sin. It breaks the commandments. These are the contributing factors. And these are the lessons for us to learn. You are Israel. Life is the journey. And there are going to be times where we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to hurry up and wait. And that's when the test comes in, and do we have the patience and the faith and the trust to continue to go to God and not repeat the sins of Israel in the desert. Now we're going to look at Aaron, because they gathered themselves against Aaron. So talking about giving somebody a break, poor Aaron. I mean, you imagine these amount of people, and by every indication, it's not men and women, it's just men coming, because Aaron's going to say something about the women and children later. I can't imagine 3,000, because that's how many die within this episode because of this. I can't imagine 3,000 men coming against me and knowing that if I say no, I'm probably going to die. Not to excuse it, but poor Aaron to a certain extent. So they say this Moses, this man, we don't know who he is. We don't know where he is. So all of this is there. So tell me, what are some things that come to your mind? Why does Aaron give in to the request? And as you're thinking, I would remind you, back in chapter 24, about a month ago, we looked at this. It isn't just Moses that climbs that mountain. Moses and Joshua climb the mountain, and they go to the top. But Aaron, his sons, and 70 men climb that mountain too. And even though they climb only halfway, Aaron, his sons, and those 70 men worship God and eat with him. That's what the text says. So it's not like we can excuse and say Aaron is ignorant. That's not there. And it's not like we can look at it and say, well, Aaron had a justifiable reason. He doesn't have that. We're looking at within a span of 40 days, just 40 days, Aaron was in the very presence of God, eating and drinking with his sons, with 70 elders, and then most likely Moses and Joshua. So in that, with your backdrop, tell me some reasons why Aaron gives in. Why he doesn't put up a fight. He just, all right. So give me some reasons. What do you think? There's no right or wrong. This is just for us thinking. Okay. Good point.
He even tells Moses that, when he comes down, he says, I just threw the gold in. I came back. It wasn't me, so.
Yeah. Good. No,
He just shoved the authority. He didn't want to take it.
and I think you're onto something. He is by default number two, because he spoke on behalf of Moses numerous times. So if you do that enough, even if people are never told, if you're kind of the spokesperson, yeah, you're probably number two. Joshua's probably number three. Number one, number three aren't here. You're it. Tom may be onto something. If you hear Tom, he's just got to make decisions. There is no Moses. He can't say, well, let me go talk to Moses. He could have said, maybe let's wait. But that's not what they want to hear. So that's one for sure. Justin?
Tom saying he took the bull by the horns.
I'll let you have that one. I'll let you have that one.
I think you didn't take the bull by.
It just jumped out. I'm going to make that into a T-shirt. Tom said didn't take the bull by the horn.
It may have just been a delaying tactic, though. Because it says he made a molded calf and he engraved it with a tool.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that takes time. You gotta, and we are assuming, big assumption, that Aaron was a metal worker. We have no other evidence of what he did prior to this point. So we're assuming that he made idols for the Egyptians as part of his enslavement.
Either that or what Jeff mentioned a minute ago, there's somebody he does know that has that skill, that he's tasked with it. Go ahead.
On that line, you talked 40 days. What's the time with this? And all we have is this one response from Aaron. I kind of have that feeling that, maybe after 20 days they came up and said, hey, we got to do something. And he says, hold up, wait a second.
Yeah.
They come back after 22 days and they say, well, we really need to do something now. He says, all right, well, let's try something else over here. 25, 26 days. That's when this comes to head.
Yeah.
But like we mentioned, he probably hasn't made any decisions before ever.
Mm-hmm.
He got called to be Moses's assistant, his family, but he was not the call. He was not the chosen. He's
Sure.
now high priest, but he was given the instruction from Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Moses says how to do things. Moses, he doesn't have a clue what he's doing.
I know, and that is a very good point. He's never had to do, as far as a national, as we would say, national level before. He's never had to do this, and it is very possible this is only the first recorded time that they've come, but they could have very easily prior come multiple times, and they're at the end of their rope. And he is too, because he may be wondering the same thing. He may be wondering, yeah, I know he went up there, but I really thought this was going to take a week, maybe two tops. There's a lot of things that could go into that. What else do you have in mind why you think that Aaron just gave in? I think fear is a huge thing. I mean, I would be afraid even if it's just 100 men, you still have fear nonetheless. Carol?
You know, the human side of you, you think, well, he had that time with God. He's seen all that God's done. And there are times that when I think of when I panic and I forget to pray or I forget to seek God, and you just wonder why why you do that or whatever. But like you say, to me, it's this high stress moment.
It is. And I like, because that's one thing that has not as a possibility been introduced, but panic very well could be. Because we could assume maybe there was some, and then it very well could have just caught him off guard. And there hasn't been kind of, I think this is coming down the line. And he's just got to make something, because I got not a crowd, I got a mob. And I got something on my hands. This has got to be it's got to be quelled. So I just need to make a decision. And panic, he made it. So it could be fear, it could be panic, it could just be just inexperience. It's numerous things. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
22, Aaron and Moses are speaking, and he says, "You know the people, that they are set on evil." So it seems that he would have like a prejudice, a preconceived idea
Okay.
of who the people really are in their hearts.
Could be. Sure.
These could have been the elders of the people, the 70 men who went up with them.
Yeah.
And 70 men who also saw God, and if they are telling you this is what we need to do, all right, that's people I should listen to.
Yeah, people I respect, people I trust. I grew up with these men. There's a lot of things that go into that. Yes.
What Carol was saying, it was making me think about with my kids, and if my kids are asking me all these things at one time, and my dog's trying to eat something, and just things are going crazy, I'm like, yeah, just whatever, So that's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And the point of asking that question is just like we did with Israel. We're not too far off from Aaron. Go ahead, Jack.
It just came to me reading verse 23 also. They kept saying, Israel kept saying, Moses brought us out of Egypt. They don't mention God. So that quick, they've forgotten all that God has done. Just that quick.
Yeah.
Joshua stayed on the mountain with Moses until Moses came down.
Correct.
So Joshua was not with Aaron. His partner or helper was not there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to add. He's alone in this. I mean, he's been singled out. There is no counsel to go to. Now, to Carol's point, I think he could have, again, passed. Let me talk to God. It's not like God can't do multiple things at a time. But you're seeing in very real time the crumbling of leadership. And it's an abject failure of leadership. And I know that's tough, but it is. And look at, again, the contributing factors, whatever they may be, that we're looking at Aaron and saying they are possibilities. But let's look at it, and how many times have they been a reality for us when we have failed to lead the way that we were supposed to lead, especially those of us that are men. What could be construed as a possibility for Aaron, who here hasn't made a decision out of panic? And who here hasn't decided something based on fear? Or who here, when you were alone and you wish you could have called somebody, but you didn't have anybody to call, but you got to make a decision because you're going through this conversation in your mind, and you just, boom, I got to do something. Something's got to be done. I can't handle the stress. I can't handle this. April, you hit it. I just needed to quiet down. It's just going to be easier to do this. And I'm just reading in between the lines with Aaron, but I don't think it's reading in between the lines for many of us. Because if we looked back, again, just like Israel, and what contributing to them making the requests they did, what's contributing to the decisions that we have made. Israel's is making a request. Aaron's is making a decision. And that's us. We're still there, right? Even if you're by yourself, you still guide your own life. What then? It's not like we're immune to panic. It's not like we're immune to fear. You mentioned that a second ago, Michelle. It's not like we're immune to being alone because Joshua's not there. So Tom and then Jack and then Darda.
How much do you think, I mean, Aaron and his sons being set up as priests, they were looked at as holy
Mm-hmm.
in the lives of people. How much of that do you think was on them to go to Aaron, but also on Aaron thinking, I'm a holy guy, you know, I'm a priest. I can do this. I mean, he knows what he did was evil, because that's the first thing he said to Moses. He
Yes.
blamed the people for being evil, and then he said he didn't do it.
Right.
So he knew he was wrong. But do you think the people knew he was wrong? Because he was set apart as God's priest already.
I don't know. I don't know if they, I would like to think that everybody knows what they're doing from beginning to end is wrong. They just have found a way to justify it using our language. He's gone. We don't know what's happened to him. We got to do something. Aaron thinks he's gone. I don't know what's happened to him. I got to do something. And we find a way with any decision we make, and this is the brutal honesty. We make a decision, and in hindsight, we try to justify why we made the decision. Do we not? I mean, I'm not saying that's with every decision, but we look back. Well, you know, it just was blank. Well, yes, it's a contributing factor. But you still got to look on the other side of things. So that's possible. It's possible, Jack.
My question is, back in chapter 24, God mentions Aaron and two others, plus all the elders,
Yes.
went halfway up the mountain with Moses. Were these men that came to Aaron in chapter 32, were they the elders?
We don't know. It's
Just
possible.
men?
We don't know.
What happened to the elders? Where were they at?
We don't know. It could be them. I'm kind of like with David over here. I think it's them. It's just as representatives. That's how it happens in Deuteronomy, in any other place. So I'm going to assume it is, but I can't tell you for sure. Not that I know of. I think his consequence is watching the people suffer. Because the people, and the consequence isn't just one, it's actually 4 consequences. They got to drink the water that's melted, that has the gold mixed in. 3,000 die. There's a plague at the end of the chapter. And then in chapter 33, God says, you're fixing to move and you're going to go and head to the promised land, but I'm not going with you. And the people mourn. That's 4. To me, I think Aaron's consequence is you're going to watch all of this. And that's because later on when King David makes a census, remember he makes an unlawful census, people pay a price. And God looks at David and says, you've really got to choose what's there. Nothing happens to David, but he has to watch the other people. And that's something. And I say that because I want to make a point with this. I'm stressing so much of our decisions as adults. You got to be aware of what's happening in your life, because if you make a decision, there are consequences, and others are not spared. We may face the brunt of them, but there is such a thing as collateral damage. There is. This is what is so tragic about all of this. No one is spared from anything. Okay, so Aaron's not plagued. He doesn't have to drink the water. He's not killed, and God's not with him. But I would imagine that he suffers because when he hears the people crying out because they're suffering, who do you think bears that guilt? Would you rather have physical pain or emotional pain like guilt? Which one? Somebody said physical. Why? It's over. It's over. I mean, Aaron's got to live with the fact that he had a moment. Yes, contributing factors of panic, fear, distress, you name it. I get all of that. We're there. But who here doesn't regret a decision they made rashly? Who here doesn't regret a decision that said, you know what, I wish I could go back 20 years ago and undo that because I'm still being plagued by that decision? Not that I haven't been forgiven. I have been forgiven, but I'm being plagued by that. You don't think that there are, who here doesn't have that? That's the whole thing. And Aaron gives in. And you know what all of this is? This is the Garden of Eden all over again. Look, if you just give in, if you just take a bite and just give in, it'll go away. It'll go away. Except on the other side, people literally had to drink water mixed with gold. And 3,000 died at the hands of their brothers. And how many more died because of a plague? We're never told what's on the other side. The worst time to make a decision is when you absolutely have to make one. Because then we don't make one with wisdom and understanding. And you mentioned this a second ago, Carol. We don't make it with God's counsel. We don't make it with God's wisdom. We don't make it with God's blessing. We don't make it with anything God related. We just make it. Because whatever in our mind is, it's just got to go away. Now, maybe I'm reading a little too much into it. I can't speak for certain with Aaron, but I can speak for certain with Elisha's life. There were some times I made it, and it wasn't rational, and it wasn't bathed in prayer. And there was no counsel. There wasn't, Scott, what do you think about this? Or, Tom, I'm facing that. I just, boom. In the course of life, just.
I think about how rash the decision was.
Yeah.
Because how long did it take to make this thing? Right? I mean, so there was a certain length of time to
Yeah.
make it where you could be mulling this over, but I guess there was no turning back.
Yeah, all the indications seems it's just, let's do this right away. Because that's what he does. Go give me all the gold. Go home, get the gold that your wives have, the women have, and the children have. Just go ahead and go get it.
Just something, because he talked to Pharaoh. He
Yeah.
passed through the sea.
He did.
Being parted. Like, you would think fear maybe wouldn't have that much of a grip on him after that.
Or it's the wrong kind of fear. The fear of the Lord is imbalanced. But you're right. Again, all these things that he himself has seen. I mean, his own staff turned to a snake and turned back. It's his staff that divides the Red Sea. It's all of these things that take place. It's his staff later on that buds and shows his leadership. So he's doing the talking. So he is the representative. And it's not that it's not that Aaron's life has changed from here on out for the worse, because I think all of those future things show that God still uses his leadership. But that one bad decision or series of bad decisions doesn't disqualify you. So we need to look at it from the positive side. But a series of bad decisions sets you back a long time. And it sets other people back a very long time, very quickly. Why does Aaron include the children? Why does he include the children?
Because they're wearing the gold.
Okay, they're wearing the gold.
They could have prayed.
Okay.
However, they were not in the habit of praying to God directly. They had a direct link through Moses.
Yeah.
So they were not in the habit of praying.
Our communication, our representative is gone. So just, again, this is just me throwing it out there. It's not an absolute. This is a specific lesson with an idol. The men are the ones who are talking to Aaron about all of this. The women and the children are back at home. When we make our idols, whatever those idols are, our families do get caught up in it. And inadvertently, I think he asked for the children just simply because he needs an enormous amount of gold. That's just practically speaking, he needs an enormous amount. But inadvertently, he sets a generational curse upon Israel. When the kingdom is divided, roughly about 400 or 500 years from this moment, what do they make? Where did that even come from? Because this entire generation, except for Joshua and Caleb, die out. Where does that even come from? How did a generations removed from this moment? No, not only to make an idol, but to make two of them, and to make this specific one. Now, I think there's some Egypt, there's some other things. This is the insidiousness of idolatry. This is the insidiousness of what we do and the decisions we make, is that it doesn't just impact me as a man and as a husband and a father. My wife will be impacted and my kids will be impacted. And potentially my children's children. This is the insidiousness of it. And if idols are not identified, uprooted, and melted down and thrown away, they will plague families. They will. Be it a career, be it academics, be it happiness, be it whatever. If God is not God every day, there will be something else. The problem is that it will become something else for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to the fourth and fifth generation. This is the insidiousness of this moment. It impacts Israel for hundreds of years. Inadvertently. I'm not saying that Aaron is saying all of us are going to become idolaters, but he inadvertently, when he includes the children, says this. I cannot stress enough to all of us as adults, those of us that have children, be aware of the decisions you are making spiritually, because they will set the course and impact generations, not just a generation. And it gets worse before it gets better. I know what's at the end, and you do too, where God's goodness passes before Moses and he tells who he is. But we got to go through some very hard verses in the next several weeks, because this doesn't stop here. Because Aaron's confronted with it now. That's what we're going to look at next. So in 2 weeks, next week will be combined because it's Thanksgiving week, but in 2 weeks, I want you to be ready to discuss this conversation that takes place between Moses and his brother. And notice that Aaron will be just like Adam. This woman you gave me is the one that gave me the fruit. These people, they wanted this. I just gave it to them. Nothing's changed. It's always somebody else's fault. But that's where we are. Take inventory of your life. Please pay attention to the decisions that you're making. There's no such thing as small or great. All decisions have an impact. Be aware of what's influencing your decisions. The class is yours.